In Alan Moore's The Watchmen, the character Rorschach tells a joke that's always stuck with me really hard, and I'm fairly convinced that when Zack Snyder decided to make a movie out of it, he completely missed the point, but I digress. The joke goes something like this. Heard joke once. Man goes to doctor, says he's feeling depressed, says life seems harsh and cruel, says he feels all alone in a threatening world where what lies ahead is vague and uncertain. Doctor says, treatment is simple. Great clown Pagliacci is in town tonight. Go see him, that should pick you up. Man bursts into tears, says doctor, but I am the great Pagliacci. Now, I'm not going to take time to talk about Watchmen because, as I've said in other videos, people way smarter and more talented than me have already covered this. However, I do want to talk about a show that I've recently stumbled on and am a huge fan of, The Crown. Now, for those of the people who know me personally know I'm a bit obsessed with England. I don't know why. I know they're gloomy, miserable people, but for some reason the history's always really fascinated me, so naturally this show really caught my attention. I wanted to talk today about a particular episode that I think is the epitome and a masterclass in the concept of show, not tell. It's the episode that addresses the moon landing. We landed on the moon! The episode circles around Prince Philip. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with The Crown, it's a show about the Crown, the Queen of England, and her posse, aka family. Episodes tend to circle around different characters. This one circles around Philip. Now, Philip is established in the show, and perhaps in real life, as a bit of a cantankerous sod. He isn't very easily impressed. He's a very thick-skinned fellow. They tease at the notion that there is a tenderness inside of him. There is a bit of sensitivity. Philip also feels that he is greatly displaced, that his ambitions far outweigh his position in life, which is a pretty bold statement for a man who's the Duke of fucking Edinburgh, but he aspires to be more. The fact that he was born into a position of wealth and power simply doesn't satiate his desire to be a great man. So when he sees Mike Collins, Buzz Aldrin, and Neil Armstrong land on the moon and accomplish something truly amazing and outstanding and unprecedented and sciencey, brave and heroic and American, he can't help but obtain a sense of extreme jealousy that borders on depression. Now, throughout the episode, we see Philip trying to compensate for the fact that he feels inadequate, that he was born into a station, even going so far as risking his life and the life of his co-pilot by flying a commercial jet into fucking space. Now, I'm no astronaut or pilot or royalty or scientist, but I'm pretty sure you can't fly a commercial jet into space. The bigger theme of this episode is Philip dealing with a midlife crisis. He is looking at himself, looking at his accomplishments, and looking at his position, and wondering why he feels this sense of inadequacy, why he feels this hole that's inside of his soul, inside of his chest. The royal family, for all intents and purposes, is an establishment that exists to basically tell us that we'll never be as good as them. That is to say, it's an establishment that exists to give the common people something to aspire to. They are a symbol that is not intended to be taken as mere mortals. They are greater than that. They are divine right of kings and shit, and, royal lineage, and they are literally an impossible standard because they're an image. They're not actual people. They're supposed to be a symbol. Philip, no less than anybody else, also exists in a great shadow of the woman he's married to. She's the fucking Queen of England. The average person would look upon the royal family and assume that would be the apex of existence. We do this a lot with celebrities and famous people and people that are famous and people we celebrate as people because they're celebrities. We assume that there couldn't possibly be a greater existence than being them. No one more so than the royal family. I bet they have a guy who's hired whose entire job is to make sure the toast is buttered correctly. Now, when I'm waking up at fucking 6 a.m. and shoveling snow off my goddamn driveway, believe me, I don't feel sorry for Prince Philip. But what this episode manages to do gives us a glimpse into what it must be like to exist on that level of reverence. Because we see somebody that Philip admires a lot more than anyone else we've seen them interact with thus far. He views Buzz Aldrin, Mike Collins, and Neil Armstrong. Jesus, how is that the name I forgot? As being gods among men. Their accomplishments, their bravery, the nobility of what they did for mankind is a feat that nobody else could aspire to. Another side plot of the episode, the new head of the church, I don't really know, dean of the church, has created sort of a men's group and invited Philip to partake. When Philip first attends, he chastises them for feeling inadequate because they should just go out and do something. Just shoot for the stars. Be great men. Do what Neil Armstrong did. If you want to feel accomplished, you don't sit here. I'm doing a terrible Philip. He rails on them for looking inward at their feelings instead of desiring to go accomplish something amazing. Later in the episode, Philip is given the opportunity to meet the 3 astronauts. And spoiler alert, sort of. It's not a plot point, but it is an emotional beat. And if you're like me and don't like those to be spoiled, I understand. Skip to this time code. I don't know. When he meets the 3 astronauts, he is unbelievably underwhelmed at how human they are. Here he had thought that he was about to meet gods among men. And like we revere the royals, he saw them as an impossible standard that could always be ahead of him, or an impossible standard that was always out of reach. But in the pursuit of that impossible standard, one found one's meaning in life. Upon meeting them and realizing that they're just normal dudes, he was deflated. And all of a sudden, that justification for existence, that justification to strive for greatness was gone. Because after all you're aspiring to is being just a human. Now, I should clarify, those 3 men were not just humans. By any standards, they were freaks. To be that intelligent, that physically fit, that brave, that noble, and that dedicated is an incredibly rare combination of characteristics that most people, and forgive yourself, will never achieve. Nonetheless, when they were presented to Prince Philip, they had colds, and more importantly, they were more interested in what his day-to-day life was like. Asking him questions about his bedroom, and do the dogs sleep with him, and do they have a butler that's responsible for buttering their toast. So in many ways, all of a sudden, Philip became the great Pagliacci. Another thing of note in the quest for greatness, I don't think there is a better metaphor than landing on the moon. It is one of the most amazingly dramatic and inspiring and all those other buzzword accomplishments that humans have. Unprecedented, fucking stupendous, great that humans have ever accomplished. It drove humanity into a state of curiosity, into a state of exploration that is responsible for a lot of the technological advancements that we're seeing today. Without them striving to that, there's a really good chance that I wouldn't be able to use a handheld camera and sit in my living room or jerk off the internet porn. They were truly pioneers. But when they landed on the moon, what they found was dust. When they looked out into space from the moon, what they saw was blackness. An empty void. However, there is one unanimous experience that astronauts all attest to, and that is when they turn around and look back at the planet Earth. They are blown away with the magnanimous beauty that lays before them. In fact, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Buzz Aldrin, but he said, if everybody in the world could have the view that I had of the planet Earth, we would never have another war. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the accomplishment that was the moon landing, but the fact of the matter is, the moon ain't shit compared to the planet that we're currently on. Now, when you take into account how vast, how big the universe is, how much potential there is for chaos and violence and radiation, comets and asteroids and aliens and anal probes, it can make your head explode. It is unbelievably daunting. However, in all that chaos and all that radiation and all those comets and all those anal probes lies Earth, this beautiful planet with everything we need. Going out there and seeing Earth from space gives us a perspective of how lucky we really are to be right where we are. Yes, we should strive for the stars. Yes, we should strive for outer space. Yes, we should strive to find life on other planets. But there's a really good chance that we're not going to find another planet as perfect for human beings as the one we're on. It's very common for human beings to look to the horizon for happiness. We always think that if I just had that job, or when summer comes, or if I had 1 million subscribers on YouTube, or if my album went platinum, or if I married a beautiful woman, or drove this car, or lived in this city, or was able to eat this food, or was Prince Philip, or was Buzz Aldrin, or was Neil Armstrong, I would be happy. And it's always an abstract horizon that we are looking for to embody our happiness. And what Philip realizes towards the end of the episode, and with the help of the very men of faith that he chastised, that hole, that feeling of emptiness, will always be there if you're always looking to fill it with something you haven't obtained yet. In order to truly feel grateful for anything, from the poorest pauper to the richest queen, celebrity, every person is responsible to find that piece of them that justifies their existence. The older I get, the more I realize it's never going to be filled with 1 million YouTube subscribers. I'm never going to feel complete by a number of commas in my bank account. If I don't feel good about myself as I am right now, there is nothing I could accomplish or achieve that is going to give me that sense of satisfaction. We get so caught up into what next achievement is finally going to flip that switch and make us accept ourselves for who we are, that we ignore the fact that right now, we're pretty good people. We live on a dope planet. I've always been a believer that happiness is not a constant state and never will be. Happiness is a series of good moments. It's when you eat good food. It's when you see a pretty sunset. It's petting your dog. It exists in tiny fractions of a moment. And we're so accustomed to wallow in misery and be present when we're feeling like absolute shit. But we're so apprehensive to wallow in gratitude or take a second when we are happy to go, holy shit, I'm happy right now. This is pretty great. So I guess what I took away from the episode is that we all need to take a second and have our looking back at the earth moment. Otherwise, we're always going to be the great Pagliacci. But what the fuck do I know? I mean, I'm not a fucking self-help guru. I watched an episode of a Netflix show and... Sorry, the camera went out of focus. I watched an episode of a Netflix show and it made me feel inspired to yap at people as if my opinion actually matters, but...
Roll on snare drum.